Well, hello, and welcome to a
Hey,
new episode. Thanks for tuning
it's
in.
yeah. How about this? We exchanged hurricane weather for a lot of heat. A lot of heat in
Yeah,
Southern California.
I mean, and who's saying global warming isn't real? Like it's over 100 degrees here in San Fernando Valley, and by the weekend it's supposed to be 70.
Yes, I know. Well, a lot of people get confused with global warming. They make jokes about it who don't believe in it. But global warming is extreme weather conditions in either direction. Like there were times where we're going, man, it's pretty cold in Southern California. It's the same thing, but right now, Florida's supposed to have this giant hurricane, and I
Yeah.
feel like telling everyone I know in Florida, hey, don't worry about it. We've been through it in Southern California. It was a piece of cake. Of
Oh
course,
no,
it's
they're
not going to be
getting
the
hit
same
hard.
hurricane.
They have like no electricity. They're getting
Oh,
flooded out. Yeah, they're getting a little harder than we did.
definitely a
So
real
that's,
hurricane.
yeah, yeah, they're getting a
Yes.
real one. Last week I had brought on the Christian Dior lip oil, the
Yeah.
cherry oil lip oil, and I was talking about a dupe and I couldn't find it. Well, it was right in front of my face as my daughter showed me, but it's okay. So this is the dupe from Amazon. And you can actually get it with the little thing on the top. I just didn't care about that, but they have the same writing on it. It's lip glow, and they're both made with the cherry oil. They're both made with all the same ingredients. This one, the dupe is made by a company called, I want to say Maepeor, Maepeor. It's Amazon's choice. It's a whopping $8.99.
That's it.
$8.99, folks. 45 $45, $8.99. $45, $8.99. So they feel exactly the same. They have the same applicator. They come in various colors. There's also other brands. Once you click on this, how everybody knows how Amazon works, that it it will say similar products. All $8.99. Total steal, totally worth it. And I highly, highly recommend it.
People love the fact that you're sharing, all the time. And then as our guest last week was saying, just check the back. It's so many things are exactly the same, and you're helping so many people out. I think it's pretty cool. I don't think a lot of people who have made their living in front of a camera would share information on how to basically look the way you want to look or do the things you want to do, and you can
On the
find it cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did that after he said that, I was like, yeah, that's true. So I went and looked at the ingredients on this dupe one, and it looked good. Looked
Yep.
good, feels good. Yeah, I'm into it and plus you lose them all the time, or if you use it a lot, it goes so fast. So to spend, 45 with tax and everything, it's over $50, opposed to $8.99 delivered. That's kind of a big deal.
And you're sharing it with your daughter.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like replacing them. I'm swapping them out. But yeah, that's the way it goes. So, what else? What's going on with you?
Boy, I tell you what, it's summertime. I haven't done the usual beach deal. Like one thing about living in Southern California is you always like to know the beach is there, and I haven't been able to go. Like I'm completely have the tan. That's where my sleeve goes, and then
Okay.
white as a ghost. But my goal in the last month of so-called summer for people who don't live in Southern California, September really is the hottest month of the year. Is to get to the beach. Love when I'm at the beach. I don't have my phone with me. It's the one time I really feel relax, but I want to appreciate it. And I don't know about you, Nicole, because you've lived in California basically your whole life. I cannot figure out directions once I leave California. Like at least with the West, I know that's where the water is. And when I go to somewhere, it could be Nevada, it could be Arizona. I am so lost on directions that I have to use my phone all the time because I need at least one of them to know where I'm going west. And then when I go back east, like you have family that's back in New York. I get confused that the water's on the east, and then New York
Oh,
is crazy confusing because there's water on both sides. You're on an island basically, and I,
yeah.
I have the worst sense of direction. I realize as I get older, I have no idea where I am outside of living in Southern California. I can't figure anything out.
You know what? I kind of am more of a visual person. So if I go
Yeah.
somewhere, I know how to get back visually. I don't think of like east, west, north, south. I don't really think about that unless I'm getting on the freeway here. And then I'm like doing the north which way am I going? But and I rely so much on the navigation these days, because it just, you can then have a conversation in the car and you're not like forgetting where you're going.
Exactly.
Because I don't know about you, but me and the girls can get to chatting, and
Yeah.
before you know it, I'm like in San Diego, and I'm like, wait, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Where do we go? What
Yeah.
happened here? So yeah. So I just kind of try to do it by visuals. I have a question for you, because I've
Yeah.
been watching the news and just going, I don't get it. What is the big deal about a little league baseball team winning a championship? Like, why this big, huge hoopla? Like, what parades,
Yeah.
flying around the United States? Like, what? These are kids.
These are kids. So this is a big deal. You're talking to a guy that's been a baseball coach for 30 years, and I coached like 45 little league teams. Like I donated a ton of time to coach in even just little league baseball. Now my high school coach, but this is a big deal because even though it happened in your area, basically in El Segundo, meaning Los Angeles, there are over 8,000 little leagues in the world. And the fact that one team won it at a 8,000 and happened to be in Los Angeles, it is a big deal. And it's memory. I'm always for coaching. The wins and losses are great, but I'm all for great childhood memories. If we can help create great childhood memories, and now these kids on that team have it for the rest of their lives, there's a family, there's a bond. It is really, really cool. I don't know. I love it. I watch it every single year. I think it's awesome.
Okay. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, super excited for them. Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment. I just don't understand making such a big deal about it. And then I heard one of the kids say this is a chance in a lifetime. I'm like, what are they, 12? How old are they? They're like,
Well,
it can't be over 15. And I'm like, a
12.
chance in a lifetime. You're setting this kid up for disappointment, because if this is, if this is the best time of his life, he's pretty screwed. Like, where do you go from here? So that's the mom in me, just like, oh my gosh, pipe down. But I guess because sports generate so much money, that's why. And people probably have their eye on these players, right?
Well, let me ask you a question on this. Well, a lot of the guys, by the way, who make it in little league and are really good now, they don't become professional baseball players. Most of them don't. It's not very often that it happens because puberty happens, bodies change, and a lot of kids don't get better from this point on. This is it. But does it bother you, as someone who's a child actor, does it bother you that ABC and ESPN, Disney make a ton of money off of those 2 weeks of broadcasting games and the kids get nothing?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
millions of
of
dollars.
course.
We're talking millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, of course. I mean, isn't sports like that anyway? Aren't players, don't they get like penalized and things taken away if they accept any kind of endorsements or money
Not
before
anymore.
they become a pro, before they're pro?
No, they changed it the last couple of years. NIL,
Oh,
name, image, likeness. So you do get paid. College athletes now get paid. High school
but
players can get paid.
you can't, like, for instance, you can't take sponsorship, like money for housing and stuff like that. I just saw somebody, they were talking about his Heisman trophy being Jerry, was it
Reggie Bush.
Bush? Reggie Bush,
Reggie
right?
Bush. That
Um
yeah, that was before the new rules.
oh, okay. Okay, that's good. That's good to know, because I don't keep up on that,
Yeah.
but I always thought, man, that is just wrong, that you can't, anything to make your life better and easier. If you're gonna sports to me is like it's such a wild thing, but it's people love it. People who love it. It generates a lot of money. It is what it is. I don't have to understand it, but I do understand how corporations work and how all of this works.
Yeah.
So I just always thought, yeah, that's just crazy that you can't take like comfort and take money, and while you're spending all this money and putting all this energy into this sports to make these people all this money, why shouldn't they be able to give you a little kickback? So
A
I'm
story
glad to
came
hear
out
that.
today. A story came out today that the quarterback at the University of Texas, who's never played a game, is going to make more money this year than the professional quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals, who has been in a Super Bowl. That's how
Oh, is
much
that
money
right?
he's making off of his name, image, and likeness, that he has that much
Okay.
money coming his way, and he has never even played before.
Oh my
Kind of
god.
crazy.
Okay, so this is a good
Yeah.
rule change. Okay, so we
Yes.
like this.
Name,
Okay.
image, and name, image, likeness. Yes.
Wow. All right. Well, good. That's good. At least people are starting to share. But yeah, that's too bad about the kids. Does the coach get anything from Disney
Nope.
for this little league? Nothing. They get
Coach
just
probably gets in
exposure.
trouble for missing 2 weeks of work. He has a regular job. He probably gets yelled at when he comes back. Like, hey, this guy's been picking up your shifts. No joke. That you're missing time.
See that? Yeah, that's a real disconnect for me. I don't. If
Yeah.
you're gonna make a big deal about it, at least, like, compensate these people.
Yep. Agree.
Wild. Wild.
You
Well,
agree?
today we've got a great guest. And with everything going on, like I don't know about you, but like this preparation for this hurricane, it was messing with me. I went to the market and it was like felt like the pandemic, it was very
Exactly.
pandemic-esque. And I was like, what are we really in store for? Like what's going on? And I was like, I don't know if I can take anymore, single mom just trying to put on the brave face for the kid. And she's like, what are you doing with all these battery lights and, candles and galoshes? And I was like, no, just in case. But, and luckily it was nothing, but it's mentally draining. So we have a great guest who is a psychology specialist. She's got a whole fresh take on, how to deal with stuff. I'll let her explain it because I am no psychologist. But let's introduce Dr. Amie Callon.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining us and giving us a little insight. Give us give us a little rundown on you and your practice and all that.
Sure. First, I have to tell you, this is a bit of a trip for me because I grew up in Palos Verdes. You probably are both familiar with.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And literally on Lenata Bay, like with the Bay Boys. And so I was one of the first girls on this surf team, but this was the culture I grew up in. And Baywatch was like the hottest show that I recall from my childhood. I'm not kidding you. Yeah, I really looked up to you when I was a kid. I was like, surfer chick. And then it's so funny winding up here as a psychologist because I almost went in the direction of acting. I did acting for a little while. And it was such a crossroads. I actually wound up getting into grad school. And the literal day I was leaving, a few minutes before I got in the car to drive up to San Francisco, I got a phone call from this agent guy who kept saying he was really interested, blah, 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 blah. But I just I didn't hear from him. He's like, oh, I just showed your whatever headshot and stuff to so-and-so. We'd really like you to come audition for this show, blah, blah, blah. I'm like getting in the car to leave to go up north to grad school. And I don't even think, I just think it's so interesting, because I really am glad with the path I took. I'm also often curious what it would have looked like the other way. I wonder if you ever had moments like this or if you just knew from the beginning.
I think you made the right decision.
I'm like, you made the right decision.
You're a smart lady in many ways.
Yeah, likewise.
That's wild. But what's funny is because surfers like Kelly Slater always hated saying, he hated being on Baywatch. And he's fine with it now, but he always hated it because all of his surfer friends, would make fun of him. So it's funny that you say you were on a surf team and that you watched. But that's so cool that you were on a surf team. I love that so much.
Why did they make fun of him?
Because it was like this cheesy, he played a surfer, but it didn't really surfers when they're photographed and they have footage, it looks so cool. It's shot by the best. Some of those like surf magazine photographers who shot the documentary, actually, they do such beautiful footage. And then, you cut to Baywatch. I'm not saying that Baywatch wasn't beautiful, but it was no surf magazine. It was no, it was kind of like BS as far as the surfing side of it went. And so I think that they just sort of teased him. And I'm I love Kelly Slater, love you, Kelly, but I don't think he was like the best actor either. That wasn't his jam. So I think that there was just a lot of teasing of him. So that
was that before he was like a famous surfer?
He was pretty famous already. He was making his way up, but he was already doing really well. That's how they even found out about him. So he was already making a name for himself. But I mean, hasn't he been the reigning champ since he was like born?
As far as I remember, yeah.
I don't even remember a time.
Perhaps they were actually jealous of him.
You never know. You never know. You never know. That you never know what people's intentions and motivations are for teasing, right? That's true.
You don't, although usually it's always coming from somewhere. You just can't tell unless you find out with talking to them, like what I do.
Right. And you're still a beach girl, right?
Yes, my office is in Manhattan Beach. and I actually live in Marina Del Rey. But I
Nice.
grew up and was living in Palos Verdes through high school till I went to college at UCLA.
So you're just like us. You can't leave the water. How often do you actually
I
visit the
can't
beach?
leave the water. And you know what?
Yeah.
I loved San Francisco when I went to grad school, and I was like, it's too cold. It's too cold for me in San Francisco. My friends up there from New York were like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I need to go to warm. Going down back to the water where it's warm, and I don't have to worry about big sharks, although now I do because things keep changing and now there's great whites everywhere. But
Yeah. So do you actually get on the beach often?
I haven't in a little while. I mean, especially because there was that, really crazy hurricane that we had to survive. Just kidding.
Have you rebuilt? Are you rebuilding? Yeah,
Yes,
no
I
one wants to go on the water.
put my patio back together yesterday.
Nothing on my patio even moved. Although it
I
did
did
give
have
it good
a couple plants
cleaning.
fall over.
Huh?
I did have a couple plants fall over, but that was
Oh,
the
you
extent
did.
of
I love that. I
it.
love
During the
that.
earthquake, that was in the middle of it.
Yeah, that was the kicker. That was what was so weird. And it was kind of like without the earthquake, it really would have been such an uneventful day, right? At least that like Mother Nature was like, "Oh, I'm gonna kick your butt with
Here, at
something.
least
Here
here,
we
take
go."
this. Yeah.
Yeah. You're getting it off easy. Here. So funny. Yeah, that was weird.
Bizarre experience. Yeah.
It really was. So tell us a little bit about your practice and like your philosophy.
Sure. Um, so I have a private group practice that I built. It's been going strong now about 17 years. It's been a wonderful experience. I've been in the South Bay doing private practice all that time. Uh, in Manhattan Beach now, started a little bit further towards PV, but kept creeping away from it a little bit. Great group of clinicians here. We really love having a space where people are really just genuine, kind of able to speak their mind, and there's not a whole lot of fluffy, phony stuff. That's just how I like it, how they like it. But we specialize in various things, but my main specialty is trauma, and in particular, something sometimes referred to as complex trauma. And so essentially, I'm sure you've probably heard something like that, or it's sometimes referred to as little t trauma or developmental trauma. But basically, it's as opposed to like war veteran trauma, where there's, often they've come back from war and there's a huge event. Complex trauma is a lot more sometimes kind of invisible to people. A lot of the time, it sort of happens chronically over time during development, and it's hard to notice. And it doesn't even have to be that anyone is like has negative intentions or anything. It can simply be a lack of emotional attunement, which that's a word I know we use in psychology that isn't necessarily in the actual dictionary. So, by the way, if I say any of those, please feel free to have me de-jargon it or something. But attunement, emotional attunement, especially like essentially means being able to respond to one's emotions in a way that is soothing. So, like when your baby cries, or you do your best to figure out what the need is, and then you meet the need. And if they're upset, you try to soothe them, right? But let's say, for example, you have a mother who is depressed and has her own history of trauma and hasn't been able to work through it. Babies are incredibly perceptive, so this starts very early, and they will pick up on slightest facial expressions, tone of voice, and very early on can learn that their needs, for example, might be too much of a burden, or they might threaten this really important bond they have with the caregiver. So what happens is a lot of the time, really from the beginning, for so many reasons, a person's authentic emotions, which makes up who we are essentially, how we really feel about things, what we need. People learn to push those down in order to maintain the needed bond with the caregiver. And this later on, as this goes on, and depending on various circumstances, can later on present as so many different things. I mean, people show up here. I work with people with eating disorders, with depression, with mood stuff, with, I mean, all kinds, a whole range. And I could safely say 99.9, maybe 100%. I mean, it kind of, in my view, comes back to some sort of missed attunement. And I want to be clear, it's really not like parent blaming. It's more about trying to finally understand the person's real experience. Because our body remembers everything we've experienced, even all the emotions we push down. And so when it's disconnected, they wind up coming up later in weird ways that we can't recognize. That's why that word trigger actually comes from this, but people have overused that to death. So it basically has no meaning anymore, but essentially what that is.
You know, I was reading How You Got Here. I believe that's what it's called. And I'm actually listening to it. It's my first audiobook, and I read pretty
Oh,
quickly, so audiobooks are hard, but it's How You Got Here, and Oprah is narrating it. But they talk about that the same thing you're talking about, but they call it inherited trauma, right? Is that the same
well,
thing? Where
that's another element. Yeah. I mean, I would say that's part of it. It kind of has to be because we also arrive and we inherit all sorts of trauma from our ancestors, not even just like not genetically necessarily, but when trauma has to stay repressed, and often that's also the case in order to survive. Like if you go through an intense trauma and you're a little kid and there's no one around to help you deal with the emotions, your brain literally walls it off in order to survive. That's why most of the time when people begin therapy with me and been a history of trauma, inevitably they'll say either they don't really remember much from their childhood, or they'll say, I don't remember much from my childhood and I don't remember anything before the age of blank. And then later on, we usually find out sort of what happened at that age. Or they say, I had a very happy childhood. And then as a little time goes on, proceed to tell me very factually all these really intense things where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's starting to sound really awful. But they kind of are detached from it as they're talking about it and insisting that it was very happy and would feel ungrateful if they were to say anything negative about it.
right. You know, I can really relate to that because I suffered some trauma when I was younger, and I really put it in a box and shelved it and put it away and didn't really think about it, denied that it ever happened for most of my
Mhm.
life until I finally was like, no, like that this is so unhealthy. You know, when somebody they just asked me the right question one day, and I just
Mm.
was like, let's open that box. Let's get that down off the shelf. And I think that and you know, you don't have to like I think people just need to be more open to getting mental health care in
Mhm.
however that is for them, because I think people don't realize like what you're saying in that
Yeah.
because you do block it out, and you don't realize that it's been passed on, or you know, this has triggered that and you just don't remember. And I think that a lot of people have such a negative connotation when it comes to mental health care, and it means that you're crazy, or it means like, you know,
Absolutely.
you're in turmoil, or something like that, instead of just, you know, taking it like people go to the gym to work on their bodies, right? People eat healthy to not get ill. You know, it's all part of the body and taking care of it. You wear
Absolutely.
comfortable shoes so you're not in pain. I mean, we take care
Yeah.
of ourselves in every way,
Yeah.
but some reason there's a stigma on taking care of your brain and your emotions, and I find that so baffling.
It is such an important point you're bringing up because it's even that still is pretty powerful. I mean, it's less than it used to be, but I think something that relates to that is also how we maybe as a country, I think have sort of come to almost like understand emotions less or something. I want to believe it used to be different. I don't know. But in a lot of ways, it feels a bit like a silent epidemic to me. What I mean by that is, um, so from my view, our emotions drive everything that we do. So, like, they tell us who we are, they tell us how we feel about things, you know. And most people seem to have very little vocabulary for their emotions or have a hard time even accessing them or knowing how to talk about them. This can be for a number of reasons, but it really blows my mind that this is not something integrated naturally into the school system right from an early age. I mean, with this being, we're really in a severe mental health crisis right now. The suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. I mean, just it's unbelievable. I think last year there were 50,000 deaths is what the CDC recorded. 50,000 people killed themselves in this country. And then same thing, I've been following the gun violence, the mass shooting stuff for maybe 10, 15 years now. And every year it's gone up steadily. And now it's at a point where it's not only every day, it's several times a day. And it blows my mind too, because I keep listening to hear if some, like, are people starting to talk about or understand maybe some of the things we need to do preventatively, because I have a lot of ideas about that, but I don't hear that being talked about. A lot of times it just kind of exemplifies how much people seem to not understand mental health, or even, I don't even use terms anymore like mental illness. There's really not this black and white. It's not like over here you are ill and over here you are healthy. We're on a continuum. That's part of what has stigmatized it. Same with emotions. It's like people will maybe have learned that expressing anger is bad and makes them a bad person if they feel angry. This is actually kind of nuts if you think about it, if you understand that emotions are just, they naturally come up. They're not the thing we can control. This gets, so emotions and behavior get conflated a lot, like as if they're one thing. The behaviors we can control, not the emotions. So our emotions are whatever they are. They're all okay. If you get angry, even if it's rage, whatever, the choice we have is how we respond to the emotions. This is a thing I think people really kind of have to grapple with or struggle with at first. So like if I am feeling very angry with someone, I have lots of choices, but only if I have awareness first that I'm really angry, feel it in your body. And then I can choose to go and yell at them, although that's probably not going to have a great result. I can take deep breaths and walk away and come back and talk to them later. I can go work out, blah, 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 blah. Right. And that will affect how you feel later on. But that's where the choice is. And so even when I hear things talked about like choose happiness, or good vibes only, or only, like there's like it's almost like people just kind of got confused or something and ran with it. Like the idea of trying to be happy all the time is very unhealthy and unnatural. But then it's almost inevitable. Every person I work with, there's like a layer of shame over their emotions. And that is something that we are not born with. The shame about how we feel, that's something we're taught, we learn. And that helps keep the buried.
Do you think that, so like say somebody has they react off their emotions, like you were saying, their behavior is that they act out, right? So I get mad at you, I yell at you, then I probably have created more anger and more shame inside myself because I know what I've done. I probably shouldn't have done that. Right. It's like now you're ashamed that you just yelled at somebody and, made a huge scene, and now you're in a fight. And if it's a loved one, they won't talk to you. And it's like, it's such a snowball, right?
Yeah. And it happens so fast. Usually you really have to slow it down to even understand that, like, there's an event happening, then there's your emotional experience in response to it. Then if you're aware of your emotions, you can decide how you want to respond and think about what might happen if you respond that way. That really requires slowing it down. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like this quick
I was saying to Nicole before you joined us, we were talking, about, basically, what's going on. And we heard us on the show talk a little bit about Little League. As a baseball coach. I was saying to Nicole that in 2020, when the pandemic happened and the kids were sent home and they stayed at home until, they came back, and they came back with masks. And again, all in favor of not passing along, but you couldn't read as you said, the facial expressions, what people are doing. It's a huge learning process. But in 2021, half the kids, I had 16 players on my team, half the kids attempted suicide. And
half of the kids on your team?
50%. And I couldn't share with other kids, you aren't the only one going through this, but I knew the story. But yet it was so scary. Kids throwing themselves in front of trains and doing other horrible things. And it was literally like, are we going to make it through the year to the banquet where nobody dies? And it was very scary. Well, from what you said, honestly, I do believe what they're kind of teaching now and to make things a little bit better and connect and understanding that there's a problem, at least at the school that I'm associated with. We're creating better people, sharing, hey, when you're having a tough mental day, is going to be a better human being in the future. The problem is the guys who are older, the guys who are my age, don't understand. They take it as a sign of weakness,
Yes.
and they make jokes about it. And
Oh, I know.
and until those people like move on or die off, I don't think we're going to have the society we want, because there's a major barrier there of the guys who have the money, and the guys who are going to be hiring are the ones that say, just put your head down and go through. And the old category of growing up here and who told you life was fair and get over it.
Oh,
That
pull your
those days,
pull your
yeah,
bootstraps.
you got to exactly put your head down and do your job.
Yeah.
But I think we're creating better people. Everything you said 100% makes sense to create a better human being. But I think there's a major barrier there where the people who are going to be doing the hirings and taking care of those people for the next 20 years think you're a weak person. And do I want to have a weak person working for me?
Well, yeah, I agree with you, and that is a big part of the problem. I also will say I've had a fair share of those kind of people with those kind of beliefs have grown up that way, come into my office dealing with something that they're not sure why it's happening, but they need help with it. And this has happened a number of times, we'll get to some of these ideas and beliefs, and it'll look like I'll be sitting in session, something will come up really painful, and I'll be watching them like trying their best to hold down the pain or the, whatever it might be, tears. And if they're able to answer when I ask, like, what's going on, it looks like you're in pain right now, but are you allowed to be? A lot of times they'll be able to say, well, no, that means I'm weak. Believe it or not, a lot of women actually will say this too. I mean, there's a lot of ideas about this. When the paradox is, in truth, it is a lot more courageous to really face your emotions. Part of the reason we run from them is because they can feel so powerful and scary that it can seem like they're going to just be unbearable. And trauma, when they're emotions from trauma, they are unbearable until they're able to be experienced with a empathic other who is able to be with them in it without judgment and without telling them that what they should do or how to fix it, because actually nothing needs fixing. This is another really key point. The thing that actually helps emotions move through us is emotional validation. Like, so when we feel, you can probably both relate to this, when we feel like, if you're having a hard time dealing with something's very painful, you can feel like you're being seen, like genuinely seen, heard, understood on an emotional level, and the person is with you and really not trying to problem solve or do any of that. That is the most helpful, healing thing we can do for one another. And that's true whether we're kids, whether we're adults. The cool thing is, even neuroscience now shows that that kind of attunement not only can change adult brain functioning, it changes the structure of the brain. So that kind of emotional attunement is like an antidote for a lot of what is going on right now. And I think social media, unfortunately, it has played a big role in making people more isolated, less really connected, when what we need is more real human connection and community. And I think there's probably a way we can start to try to use it to increase real human connection, because that's actually what's needed. It's sort of like, if you've heard of failure to thrive syndrome, that's when babies literally die when they're not being held or given enough affection. They stop eating and they die. Then we learned that in World War II. Or like there's a famous monkey experiment. Have you ever heard of this? There are two wire monkey mamas. One of them is, you've heard of it? One of them is,
Well, just go ahead, tell the story. I'm sorry. I took psychology in college, so I did hear this. Go ahead.
Real quick. They're monkey mamas, but they're made out of wire. And then there are baby monkeys that are real. And the one wire monkey is very soft. It has this like really soft fur attached to it. And the other one has milk. And so they let the monkeys just they watch what they do over and over. And each time the monkey goes immediately to the soft mommy, and they only go over to the other one when they're really, really hungry and they need food, and they'll tiptoe over, they'll get the milk, they'll run right back to the sort of, showing again, we need to feel loved in a way that is like we're accepted for who we are, that we can be authentic, because we need that, and we need human connection and attachment. But a lot of times those two things wind up getting pitted against each other. We also know that this winds up, when we repress emotion, it also, scientific, this is fact, if it stays that way, it will turn into disease in some form or another eventually. That's just the science. But here's a real twist. Why is it that we know all this? I mean, doctors are talking about it, like Gabor Mate, if you've heard of him, as an example. We have all this evidence of research, yet doctors are still not being taught. They don't, not only do they not have a course on anything about trauma and how it affects the body, where there should be like a 5-year thing, not even one class. So they never even ask their patients about trauma.
Because it's all about money, right? It's all about just prescribe them this and, let's just treat the disease once they have it, because it makes us millions and millions of dollars. If you put people into therapy and help them with their trauma, well, then they lose a shit ton of money, correct?
Which is probably why, yeah, totally. Which is probably why insurance companies love to push this like short-term kind of, these days it's really like the big push, I think, from insurance companies is to do more short-term therapy that's like almost as if we're robots and like you're going to do a workbook and here, do this homework. But the real thing is we also have this knowledge. I don't know if everyone forgot, but above all, the most important thing in any therapy that's going to be productive or effective is the relationship. It's the relationship. It's how you feel with the other person. Like you mentioned, someone asked you a certain question, like the right way, I think you said, or something, and you were like, okay, I'm ready to deal with this. I would bet, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you also felt some sort of emotional safety with that person.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I did. Because, I grew up my parents were in World War II in London, in England and Germany. And so, for me, it was always, I grew up with that kind of parenting where what do you have to be upset about? Look at your life.
Oh yeah.
What are you
Oh, yeah.
complaining about? So I was always taught to
Oh,
repress
suffering
everything.
is.
So when anything traumatic happened to me, I would tell my inner child would tell myself, you have such a good life. What are you complaining about? Right. Because it was just
There's the
drilled
shame
into
about
me.
your
There's
feelings.
the shame part. Yeah. And when
Yep.
I first started going to therapy, my mom got angry with me. And instead of saying like, good for you, working on yourself, she got angry and she goes, and let me guess, you're going to come back and you're going to blame me for everything, And it was that stigma. And I was like, God, it's so weird because we haven't even talked about you yet. It's like, she was a bit of a narcissist anyways, but it was like, we haven't even got there yet. And I already feeling better. We're talking about things about me, not about, you. So it's just, there's that shame. And I was raised that way. So yes, when somebody, I don't know if it was just the right day. I was in the right mood. It was the right person. I don't know what it was, where I'm at in life. It just like opened. It was like
You were ready
a
too.
light came on. Yeah, I was ready.
Yeah. I had a similar experience, and it was with finally finding the right therapist. And also I've been trained in contemporary psychoanalysis. That's different from Freudian. Please understand, very, very different. People often confuse that. But they require you to go through something of your own analysis with a contemporary analyst. Anyway, I luckily found a really wonderful person that I would say helped me face the stuff I didn't even realize at the time I was running from. And it was the most powerful, impactful shift of my life. And it was several years, but it was like sort of leaning into the fear, walking into the darkness, so to speak. By darkness, I don't mean bad, and I don't even think emotions should be categorized as negative or positive. They're all okay. But being able to feel safe enough with this person that we were both in there together, I wasn't being judged, and I could actually feel. And so it's like all the stuff your body's been carrying around, the emotional memory. Now there's meaning around it. And there's like we call it integration. So when this happens, that's what we're aiming for. And you become more of like a whole person, because all those split off parts of us, those emotional states that are split off, they're a part of us. And so a lot of times we're running from them. We want to kill them off because of the shame. But actually, it's like you don't want to cut off your right arm, right? Even if you think it doesn't look good.
Right. And you're right. People are running from it, hiding it, covering it up, disguising it. I was in my doctor's office, and she's my general. She's this wonderful lady from India, and she's not big on medications and stuff like that. But anyways, while I'm waiting for her, excuse me, she's in the room next door with a guy, and I can hear them clearly. And he says, he starts asking for a medication, and she said, "I'm your general. You need to go see, your therapist or your psychiatrist or your psychologist,
she's
whatever."
a good doctor.
She's a good doctor. She said, "And you should probably have a number of sessions with them before you start taking any of this kind of medication." And she said, "And I don't prescribe that. That's not who I am." So then he asked for another prescription for something else. And she goes, "Well, you need to go see like a cardiologist." I think it was what she said for that. And he says something about, "These are just simple prescriptions. These are simple medicines." And he starts yelling at her, and she loses it. And she's like, she starts getting on her phone. She's like, "Let me show you something." And I can hear her. And she said, "There's no such thing as simple medication. You think it's simple because you're just popping a pill in your mouth with some water. There's black labels on every single one, lists and lists of why medication is bad." And
That's right.
She made him leave. She asked him to leave, and it was wild. And she came in and she vented to me, and she's like, the concept of simple medication, the fact that he could say that, she goes, "It just really pisses me off because there's no such thing."
I really like her.
I know. She's really, really
She's
cool.
really good.
And,
I'm serious. I mean, I'm really impressed, and I have a lot of respect for the way she handled that. Because yes, there are no simple medications. And do you know how many doctors that are not psychiatrists and not trained at all in mental health are prescribing like gynecologists? "Oh, you want some Xanax? Oh, you want some antidepressant?" All the time, all over the place. It is wild.
It's
And
so
also,
wild.
just like he's probably wanting to keep running from whatever emotional stuff he hasn't dealt with, right? And thinking that if I just get the right medication, it'll help me avoid that, continue to avoid it. By the way, this is how addiction happens, this is how all kinds of eating disorder, blah, blah, blah. There's no such thing as simple emotional worlds either. If you've lived on this planet and you're an adult and gone through all these experiences, there's a complex emotional world under there that we kind of are afraid of at first, but is actually, it's like the golden compass ready to show you who you really are and get to live a much richer life.
Yeah. I love that. I love your whole philosophy. And thank you for coming on. And like, people really need to be more comfortable with embracing everything that they've got going on, and know that it's what makes you beautiful. It's what makes you you. And how boring would it be if we really all were just happy? If
It would be so boring.
Our lives are perfect and we're
So
all so
boring.
happy. Boring.
We also
especially
wouldn't
for
be able
me.
to
I
have,
like the dark shit.
we
Yeah.
wouldn't have any real deep connections, the stuff that's the antidote. You actually have to be vulnerable and be willing to share what you're really feeling, all of the ones you like and don't like, in order for there to be a real deep connection that's meaningful created. People feel so much more alive and rejuvenated when that happens. It's really interesting. I'll notice it in practice. Like if I start getting sleepy all of a sudden, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's interesting." Usually I'll notice somewhere along the way there became a disconnect in the like the emotional connection. And if I can find my way back to it, it's pretty amazing how quickly I will feel awake again. It's like brings energy, real authentic connection. Yeah.
100%. And let me just say, people, we would not have comedy. We would not even have humor if it wasn't for the bad stuff,
That's
or that,
right.
quote
All
unquote bad stuff. We wouldn't
Yes,
even
all
have
the
humor.
best.
We'd have nothing to laugh about. So
Have you
get
noticed
in
all the
touch
best
with it.
comedians tend to also have pretty dark, like other side, Yeah.
100%. And they talk about all the dark, and somehow they make it funny, and we sit there and laugh and don't even realize that without it, the world doesn't go round. So
No, we're all
thank
human.
you.
You're welcome. I just wanted to say this one quote kind of captures a lot of what I think is so important. And I can't find the actual author. It always just says Scottish proverb. So I'm sorry, author, if you're out there, please tell me who you are. But the quote is, "They talk of my drinking, but never my thirst."
Ha. That's, ooh, you kind of gave me chills. You kind of gave me chills. I read a book every day called The Promise of a New Day. And it's sort of an affirmation book, but it's, it's like a message. And mine today, kind of, back to what you just said, it was about don't do anything in private that you're not willing to like
Mm,
share. Right.
mhm,
So, because it causes shame. And so if you're making choices that you don't want everybody to know about and you're not free to talk about, like, don't do them.
mhm,
Right?
mhm.
So it's sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know why it reminded me of that, but it's sort of the same thing of like, think of why you're doing it, not what you're
Why? The
doing.
why, right? Which
Yeah.
it's like the focus on diagnoses and symptoms and da, 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 da. It's just got to stop with that being the emphasis. It doesn't tell us anything about what's happening that led to that. And when you understand what's happening with the person, it's amazing because the symptoms naturally start to go away. I can say this, I've seen it happen over and over and over.
Love that. And thank you. Thank you for being there for people. And
Thank
again,
you.
Dr. Amie Callon in Manhattan Beach, if anybody is in the area and needs a great doctor. And so thank you just so much for sharing with us and bringing
Thank
light
you
to
so
this
much for
very
having me.
important issue,
You guys are very lovely and pleasant to talk with. I really
as are
appreciated it.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
And
so
you're really
much.
pretty to look at.
And so are
Not
you.
only is she pretty on the outside, she's pretty on the inside. She's smart in the brain. She's got it going on.
And
She's
so
got
are
her.
you. So are you,
I don't
Baywatch
have
Freak.
I
I
don't have the
looked up to you
brain.
my entire childhood.
That was really cool. I thought that was very neat to have, I think, a mental breakdown as far as what goes on through people's minds as we're learning. I mean, we're discovering, Nicole, new people, a new way of acceptance, my opinion. And I had this discussion with a buddy of mine in the neighborhood the other day, where obviously there's a major homeless problem in San Diego. There's a major homeless
Yeah.
problem in Los Angeles. There's a major homeless problem in San Francisco, New York City. It goes on and on, and it's
Yeah.
continued to get worse. And it used to be, at least when I was younger, and even just a few years ago, because some of my friends still believe this, those people are just lazy. Well, it's not the lazy people exactly. It's the
No,
people,
it's
because there are
not.
tons of programs out there now to help the people out who want to change their lives and move in the right direction. There are a lot of programs. It's the mental health is what people want to ignore. And the fact that, we have people like our guest who is pointing out, you have to get in touch with what's going on with your brain. And if you can't figure it out, someone can help you figure it out so you can move on to have a successful life. But acceptance is a big deal to understand. Hey, you might be making it through day by day, but the person next to you, I guarantee you, someone within eyesight's not making it through on a regular basis. They're struggling.
100%. And, a lot of people, I think, also too, think they can't afford healthcare, mental health care. A lot of people are, like myself as a child, shamed into it. And I think so a lot of people turn to addiction too, right? Because maybe they don't have
Yeah.
health insurance and they don't go to a doctor and ask for that little happy pill. So they turn to the streets and become addicts. I always wonder because, and listen, the truth is that a lot of the homeless people I see them daily. They're shooting up, they're getting high, they're drinking. I saw a man rubbing alcohol in the back of the market the other day. And I mean, I was like heaving, and but I felt so horrible for this person. And I always wonder, is it the addiction that got them homeless, or were they just struggling mentally that got them homeless, and then they turned to addiction to like make the homeless not feel so bad? Like, whatever it is, it's an epidemic and it's horrible. And I think it all goes back to the shame, and like what you're saying is that there's help out there, but you know, something else is taking over.
There has to be, to me, there has to be more access to it. I mean, I dealt with a child who went through severe depression for about 4 years. And even though we had insurance, they would only see him once every 6 weeks. In reality, he should have been going probably to a therapist 4 times a week. And
Right.
he was on the brink of suicide over and over again. And, I told you on this show, there was a time where if you would have told me my son was going to die from suicide, I 100% expected it. But even though we would tell the doctor, look, he needs to see you more than once every 6 weeks. Well, that's all that the medical plan went for. And we have great insurance, and we completely could not get more appointments. And it's very scary because we worry about today's youth and we worry about today's adults. And there's so many things that people stress out about. But the old school days of, hey, just put your head down and bear through it, it's not exactly the right way to go, you know?
It's not. And I see a lot more commercials, and I do think that mental health care has gotten more accessible. You can do all the online Zooms and there's commercials for it and everything, but it's expensive.
It
Right?
is.
So it's expensive, and the state's not really kicking in for that part. They'll kick in
No.
for your groceries, and they'll kick in for your free needles, but they're not gonna kick in for your mental health care so much. And it's just, it's really, I think that that's sort of where it begins. And it just needs to happen. It should be a requirement that people go to some kind of therapy once a week from a young age. I think so. That's my personal opinion. I loved it, and it changed my life. And I will say it over and over again. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't go. And I tell my children, do it, go. This is, it's important. So I think that would also help take the stigma away from it. I'm not saying it would help everybody and it would work for everybody, but it definitely would. It would work for the majority.
I remember
But
I was a psychology major when I first started college. And I remember one of the first things that the professor said was everyone should go to a therapist twice a year. Even if you think you're doing good. It's like going to the dentist for a teeth cleaning. You go twice a year just to make sure you're balanced. Even if you think things are going well, hey, let's check it out. And I remember I was 18 years old when I heard this, but the more and more I think about it, I think they were 100% right. Just
yeah,
to be balanced. What's the
and you
big deal?
don't
You're going to
even
go
have
for your
to.
teeth twice a year, but not for your brain?
Right, exactly. That's my point. And the thing is, it's like you don't have to go immediately, reveal all your deep dark secrets. You can start off small with something that pissed you off last week, and start to unwind there and get comfortable. And then you realize, like, well, I feel so much better about what happened last week just by talking about it. And then you start to like open up, and it just creates this comfort, this comfortable place, a safe zone, so to speak. And I just think that people don't realize that. I think they think they're going to go in and be judged and have to tell everything horrible that ever happened to them. And, they think that it works like that, but it doesn't. You can just
No.
baby steps. You just go in and talk about, what, today this person yelled at me for no reason and I got angry, whatever it is. I think when you start small and then you realize like how healing it is, then you want to start bringing stuff up and bringing stuff out, and you're safe, and it feels good and it's healing. And yeah, so I'm a big believer. I'm a huge believer and
I
huge
am too.
advocate of it.
I think that was an important show. I'm glad that was the direction we went. I think that was great.
Yeah.
I do want to get to today's mailbag. I know I always say we're running a little bit long, but I want to
Okay.
get to today's mailbag. So again, if you want to ask Nicole a question, it's easy. All you have to do is go to the website perfectlytwistedpod.com, and right there Nicole's mailbag is right at the top, and you can sit there, write a question in or more than one, and we'll try and get it on there. All right, so Nicole, I have 5 for you. Okay, today.
Okay.
First one's from Curtis. It says, what is your favorite kind of movie to be in? Is it action or comedy or drama?
I mean, my first instinct is going to say action because I love action. I love stunts. We've talked about this. I love the energy of it. But the truth is, you have to switch it up. Like I don't have a favorite. So like comedy is so fun for me. I love comedy. I love laughing all day. I love being around funny people. I love trying to be funny. I love all of that. I think if you just stick to one all the time, it gets really boring. And then the drama, sometimes you get sick of laughing and you get sick of trying to be funny and you want to just cry. You want to, you be dramatic. So I feel like, to me, the perfect combination is all of them. It's a combination of all of them. But I do get excited over an action.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. If someone want to put together a movie of your entire life, what actress would you like to play you?
Oh,
That's
oh
always a
boy.
tough question, I think.
That is, because it would probably be a few different actresses, right? Because my story starts
Yes.
so young and now I'm old.
True.
Um,
You
so
aren't old.
you would need a young, a middle, and an older. The middle, could it be Margot Robbie?
I like that. That's
You
pretty
know,
cool.
I love her so much.
Yeah,
You know, or give somebody new a shot. You know, why does it have to be somebody famous already?
I like that. That
Listen, my
actually, I think
story's not over. There's no life story here yet. I'm not going anywhere.
good for you. Good for you. All right, this is from Daniel. Nicole, did you ever meet Alanis Morissette, just one of the girls?
I did briefly. Briefly, she kind of, you know, was the rock star that came on stage, did her because she was performing in it, and I was in the audience. And but yes, in fact, I did. Yes.
What was she like? Was she nice? What was she like?
Yeah, she was nice. I mean, we were both
Yeah.
really young and we're hectic on set, and she's, you know, performing, and I had been punched in the nose by another co-star, actually broke my nose.
Wow.
It was a hectic day. Let's just say that it was a hectic day for all involved. But the moment that I met her and everything, yes, completely pleasant. And as you can see, she's grown into, you know, a wonderful lady, and
Yeah.
yeah, she's talented, and she's all of that. Beautiful, talented. She's got it all going on.
I used to listen to her all the time, but I was like, man, this girl's angry. You know, her music.
You know,
And I liked it. I mean, I enjoyed it, but at the same time, if you would have said, hey, you have the opportunity to meet her, I think I would have backed away. I think she would have scared me.
okay, so full circle here.
Yeah.
She, you know who she wrote the song about, right?
No, no.
Okay. It was the guy, the blonde guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, from Full House.
From Full House.
From Full
The
House.
guy the guy that did all the voices and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's who she wrote. Because I was
is it
expecting
Dave
some like,
Coulier? That guy? Is that his name?
yes, yes, yeah. I think
Holy
that's his name,
cow! She wrote the song
right?
about that guy.
So that's what it was about. That's who it's about. Like, she's so in love with that guy, but he had been asking me out. He had been trying to get in contact with me to ask me out. And I was like, okay, when I found out that that's who it was about, I was like, well, man, I dodged a bullet. Not that,
Yeah,
you know, it just was like so full circle with Alanis Morissette that I was
it's
like,
hilarious.
that's, yeah, hilarious, right? Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I was expecting that song to be about some, like, you know, bad boy, but I
Oh
guess
my
bad
gosh.
boys come in all shapes and sizes, don't they?
I guess so. All right. Next question from Daniel. Nicole, are you into astrology?
You know, I don't like study it or anything like that. I read about my sign and it's usually spot on. I do believe there's probably something to it somewhere. I'm not a big believer in, like, you know, relying on those things or, you know, following my life by those things. But I will tell you that my sign and my description, you know, the whole stubborn, independent, hard worker, you know, OCD, all that, it's a lot of it is very spot on. So, you know, I kind of believe in a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Kind of in the same boat as you. Final question. Who were your favorite bands and singers when you were a kid?
Oh, you know, I was really all over the place. So, I used to love Fleetwood Mac. I used to love Beastie Boys. I
Yeah.
used to love The Cure. I used to love Depeche Mode, Oingo Boingo. I like some punk stuff like Murphy's Law. Um, I really truly was all over the place. I used to listen to Willie Nelson all the time with my dad. Um, so you know, it was like that. That's where it's what I'm still like that. Whatever mood I'm in is what I put on. You know.
I do the same. Do the exact
Yeah.
same thing. People always talk about, you know, like I have my own playlist and it is all over. And they're like, this is from the same playlist. I get bored. I jump around all the time. That's just what I
Same,
do.
you know what? And there'll be a song that I really like one moment in one mood, and then it'll just get on my nerves, you know, when
Yeah.
I'm in a different mood. So, yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, that's it. We knocked them all out. Again, if you want to ask a question to Nicole, it's easy. All you have to do is go to the website, perfectlytwistedpod.com, look at Nicole's mailbag, write it in, and we'll try and get it on there.
Yes, and please tune in, go to YouTube, watch us, give us a rating, give us a review. Oh, you know what else I just wanted to say? I wanted to give a shout out to the Bachelorette because she picked the right guy. She picked Dotun. I just had to say that. I'm never usually good at this stuff, and I don't think people usually make the right choices, but she did. And our new Bachelor is that Joey, who was the runner-up, who seems like a great guy. But I just wanted to bring that up for anybody that was listening
Perfect.
when I did that
Love it.
Bachelor rundown. So, yeah, Good for her. I hope
Love it.
I hope you get really happy together. Okay, so see
Good
you
deal.
guys next week. Yeah. Thanks for listening.